Have you ever had a conversation with somebody who was trying to compete with you? This is a difficult topic to talk about, but on the D Word podcast today, I felt that we needed to talk about it because there's many layers to someone competing with you. Someone could be competing with you and you don't know it, but in their language, the evidence is there. Now, what do you do with somebody who competes with you? Well, you can't do anything because that's their goal in life, to compete. If someone has something that they want, they have to get it or something better. And I don't know where that ends because in life, you can't live life competing with other people's joy, blessings, or success. It just isn't healthy to be thinking and feeling that way. Now, how does one identify someone who is competing? Firstly, there'll be no joy or happiness for you in something that you have, that they also have, right? There'll also be no celebration in something you've achieved on your own, even though they know it's hard work. So basically in conversation, how they behave or what they say to you is a good template to use to identify someone who's competing. Now, is it safe to be around people who are competing with you? Honestly, I think some people would say, oh, you know what, it doesn't matter. But that's ignorance, and ignorance being bliss in the situation is quite dangerous. I personally do not like being around people who are competitive because they will instill things in your mind in personal conversation that may hover in your mind when they're not with you. Whether you like it or not, you can say you're strong, but at the end of the day, if people feed in this energy, it is giving some vibes to you, whether you want to accept it or not. So me personally, I don't like being around people who are competitive because at the end of the day, I'm not a person who wants to compete. I like to see people being blessed. And when somebody is being blessed, I like to celebrate them. I like to say, well done, awesome achievement, awesome. I'm not that person who wants to say, oh, why not me? That is also competitive. So if you're the person, right, and I'm saying this with love, if you are that person, when other people get something that you don't have, and your response is, but why not me? Why them? That is also a spirit of competitiveness because you are somehow not digesting the fact that somebody else has something and you should be happy for them. You're using that as conviction to something in your own life, which is also dangerous. Now, I'm no psychological guru in this situation, but over time, I've actually been around a lot of people who were very competitive. And in my 20s, I think I've been around many people who were constantly competitive. And I knew they were competitive because their body language said a story, their conversation said a story. But the truth that I had to digest was accept the fact that they are competitive. And what was I going to do if I was rolling in their circle? Now, this is a tough one to talk about. And I think if you really want to be honest with yourself, you need to explain this to your heart. Life is about experiences. And life is about wins. And life is about being around the right people in your life. So if you're not around people that are pushing you to do better, then you obviously are around people who are dragging you down or who are triggering your defenses in the wrong way. I have to share this with you because this is the personal part of the podcast. I don't edit my podcast. I love to talk about things, and I always love talking about things when I experience it. And I never talk about something on my podcast that I haven't had personal growth in. I'm learning every single day. And I think that the more you learn, the more you are tested in it. And I love tests because it allows me to put what I've learned into action. So here is a classic example, which I'm sure you have come around people like this. So recently I had a conversation with a total stranger, and I met him with a bunch of people that were around me. And if you didn't know this about me, I love to travel. I've traveled to many countries. Everybody has different life goals. My wife and I, we love to travel. That's our thing. And if you check out my social media, you'll understand what I mean. But I also have some boundaries on what I post on social media, so bear that in mind. So this person asked me a question, and he asked me, hey, I know you travel, and how many countries have you been to? So firstly, my defenses came up and said, hey, this guy obviously knows I travel, right? And then he asked me a question about how many I've been to. So I genuinely thought this guy was maybe an avid traveler, and he also wants to know, hey, how many countries have I been to? So I gave him the number. So when you give someone an answer like this, you expect like maybe, hey, wow, that's interesting, or that's awesome. He didn't give that. His answer was, but my brother and my cousin, they went to this place, this place, this place, this place, and they went to that place, and this place, and you didn't go there. At that point, my mind said, this person is competing. So what am I going to do? I'm not going to feed in. In my head, I'm saying, your cousin and everybody else that you mentioned here, they are not part of this conversation. You are. You asked the question, but you're giving a response that doesn't even relate to what I'm talking about. You're talking about somebody who's not in the conversation. Do you know how weird that sounds? But then I realized he had to compete with what I said. So his defense mechanism used somebody in his world that could compete. There are many people in this world that you can come across like that. When you say something, they give a response that's different. But if you listen to it carefully, you will understand that they are competing with you in conversation. It's like when you get a new car, a new house. How many people say, but I have this, or you have this? The buts mean also competitiveness. What I do in situations like that is I just keep silent. I don't say anything because I've identified that this person is competing and I don't want to engage. Because a competitive person wants validation because you said something, they said something, and they think that what they said is better. So they're waiting for your response to that. And it'll keep on going on and on. So you can't get validation from someone who's competing. But what you can do is set a boundary in your conversation with that person. Try to say less. Try not to say things that feed on what they want to hear. And if you have people around you and you see that they are competitive, maybe you need to ask yourself, why am I around them if they don't see the goodness or the joy in me, or they don't validate me as a good person? They look at me as competition. Now, I'm going to say this once. People who compete are seeking something in their own heart. You can't fix that. So you have to let them be. It's sad but true. You have to let them be. They will always be competitive. That's just the way they're wired. And you can't compete. But what you can do is just say less. Now, this podcast was not built to showcase competitive people. This podcast was built today to share with you real experiences that all of us are experiencing, you and I together. We all have experienced people like this. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying that you need to be self-aware of people who are like that, because they can drain your peace in your day. And you don't want that to happen. That's the goal of what I'm sharing here today. Watch people who try to do that. And if you've been around people who say, hey, I'm doing this because it's who I am, that's great. You can't change that. That's who they are. But what you can do is observe, identify, and prepare yourself for more encounters like this. Not just for yourself, but for your peace that is so important to protect in the times we are in. So that is what I wanted to share about today. Watch who you talk to, watch who you share conversations with, and try not to be around people who compete with you. And if you are a parent, life isn't just about competing with your kids and your friends' kids. Life is about living life according to your own rules and your own lane. And you don't have to follow what other people are doing and how you need to compete. Be in your own lane. You are directing your life and your family should be proud of the direction you're going. And if it's not going in the direction you want to, maybe pray about it, seek God to ask help and say, hey, how can I fix this? But God's not going to help you if you keep on making wrong decisions. So also make better decisions. Gain knowledge from people around you who inspire you to do better. And then you will get somewhere better. This podcast has been interesting because I never edit my podcast and I had a bit of a frog in my throat. Hope it wasn't too bad. But I hope you got to take away something from the D-Word podcast today. And remember, you're valued, you're loved, and don't let anyone say anything less to destroy that from you. Until next time, take care.